Sup nerds, Seth here to help you level up your fandom. Welcome to devlog number 2 of the SpaceCastleVR project. In this one, we are going to go through my notebook, look at sketches and just general layouts and floor plans of the space castle itself. We will go through, where I'm going to put spawn points or elevators and arcade cabinets, all of that kind of stuff. And then we're going to hop into Unity. I'm going to block it all out, just in gray blocks, untextured. See if we can't figure out the scale of the whole thing. Make sure that everything kind of is sized right. The rooms are big enough and things like that inside VR, and we'll check out all that. And then maybe I'll even pop it to an APK and put it on the Quest fully standalone just to see what that might be like. That's kind of exciting, right? All right, let's get into it. Alright, thanks for sticking around. Like I said, we're going to hop into the notebook first and go over just my quick sketches and floor plans for the actual kind of layout, and obviously this is all subject to change. So, what we're looking at, I've got my little pointer here. I've decided on 5 different floors, including a little atrium here at the very bottom of the castle. This is kind of a cube-shaped, star-shaped castle, if that makes sense. So, it's going to have straight walls and then this star shape. So you can just think of these as just stacked floors as the castle. First floor is going to be the bridge. It's going to be at the top of the space castle. Then we've got a recreation deck, a screening deck, the crew deck, and then the observation deck all the way at the bottom, which is going to be just a glass sphere so you can look at the space skybox. Okay, so I've got this list of items just to the right of each floor, which I have just as areas of interest so I can get a general feel for what each floor might contain, how it'll be laid out and stuff like that. So if we start with, like, say the bridge, we've got like the main console cabinets for like the mess hall area here, and then the mess table. We've got the spawn in teleporter, which is incredibly important. That is going to be the spot when you load into the game. That is where you spawn into all of this. Everything else will be accessible through the elevator here on the other leg, up and down between the floors, but spawning into a new instance will always bring you right here on the bridge. And then we've got like a fake recording studio, control consoles, and a change appearance console here at the crotch of the star. The change appearance is kind of aspirational, right? I want to be able to hopefully be able to change gloves and masks and stuff like that, right? So that's a little bit aspirational, but that's where you'll do it. Just a quick rundown of the other floors. The recreation deck is going to be games, kind of bar style games, right? It's got a ping pong table, a real chessboard, rocket darts, shuffleboard, which is going to be fun, kind of a shooting gallery sort of situation. This center table, I'm not entirely sure. In my head, it's like a board game of D&D, right? It's like Demio in my head there on that table. That's obviously not going to happen. I'm not that good of a programmer, but maybe we'll do a diorama or something of Rec Deck, which is a D&D live play show that we're starting. And that's also what's going to be over here in this trophy case on the wall. It's just character models from that game. Lastly, we've got a very important piece down here at this bottom leg, which is the holodeck, or whatever I end up calling it. And that's going to be kind of an experimental portal. So once you can kind of choose different environments to hang out in, like a rainforest or, a rainy greenhouse or an old library or things like that. Just places to go and just walk around in VR because it's cool. It gives me a chance to model some interesting places. But that might also include like full-on other games, right? Is if I make, I don't know, an escape room or something like that, you'll hop into the holodeck and that will like teleport the player or players to whatever other scene, whatever other level that will take place in. So that the holodeck is a portal to a completely separate sort of situation, whereas the rest of these floors will take place all within the same scene, all at the same time. Next, we've got the screening deck, which will have like a big screen TV of some kind, maybe playing YouTube videos or something like that, something that we can all kind of view. That's another one that's fairly aspirational because I'm not sure that I have the programming chops for that kind of situation, but if I can, that's what we'll do. And then arcade cabinets, yet another aspirational game. I want to have playable arcade cabinets in situ, so you can just walk up to a cabinet, hit the little start button, and play like some kind of 2D mini game or something. That's what all these are going to be, hopefully. 4 is DT's special room, which if you listen to our podcast, you'll know is, who knows what's in there, man. I don't know. I don't ask those kinds of questions, but that's where that's going to be. Next floor down is the crew deck, and that's going to be bedrooms, storage rooms. We have an AI on board, which again, if you don't listen to the podcast, you don't really know. It's Goldblum. He's an AI that we all kind of collectively program, kind of runs the ship, kind of helps us keep the show on track, stuff like that. He's got his quarters down there, and then we just have like storage rooms, and right here in the center is going to be like our engine room. So it'll be fun to create some kind of crafting situation there, but that's all. It's all just storage and bedrooms here on the crew deck. And then lastly, we have the observation deck right below that, which is basically a glass room. It's got an elevator shaft at the back, and then this is the entire rest of this room. It's only about a quarter of the size right now of a normal deck, but it's just going to be glass all the way through, so you can just look out at the, I don't know, maybe nebula skybox that I end up putting in there, something like that. Look out at the stars and contemplate mortality, which is a huge theme of our podcast. So that's kind of the initial layout. I think it allows me a lot of cool challenges and things to do, like making a real actual version of chess, which I think will be fun as hell to program, and it'd be fun to just walk up and start playing chess. Shuffleboard is another one that I'm really excited about, which is over here on the rec deck in the corner. That's one I'm really excited about because it's just physics interactions. Like, it should be fairly easy to program and keep score of and things like that. That should be super fun. This is kind of an out. This floor plan is actually going to be more of an outline of future devlog videos because I need to make and figure out how to program most of this stuff, or abandon it, which I think will be fine as well. It's a good initial layout. The Space Castle logo is star-shaped, so that's why I went with the star-shaped floor plan. That's it. That's the only reason. And it gives me I'm a huge proponent of constraints and creativity, so forcing myself to be in a star-shaped floor plan means I get to be a little bit creative on the layout and the decks and things like that, which is fun. It's great to have a starting point. Now, let's hop into Unity and start blocking out the bridge. I guess will be the first deck to start with. That way we can get a feel for the scale, we can get a feel for if the rooms are big enough or small enough or whatever, and just get a general idea of how this is all going to work. First things first, let's hop into Unity. Let me just change scenes. We're going to open up our Unity hub, and then we're going to start a new project. So for this, I am going to do the VR core because it does have a lot of stuff kind of already set up. Currently in 2021.3 is a URP system, which is fine for me. Let's rename this to like, I don't know, SCVR for SpaceCastleVR spatial tests. It'll start up its project. So while that's starting, we've got a couple of things we can do. I want to set up a checklist of what needs to happen first. And that is, initially we need to get the XR plugin management set up so that we're importing Oculus stuff and getting that kind of input system good to go. Then I need to import AutoHand, and then we'll need to set up like the initial parts of the scene. So get AutoHand imported into the actual scene itself and kind of set up and situated properly. And then we can start construction. Okay, so we've got a more or less blank Unity project here, but you can see we've got like some XR stuff already here at the bottom. So first things first, we need to open up our package manager. We need to go to My Assets. You'll see a bunch of old stuff. We need to import AutoHand. Yeah, we'll just import the whole thing. Having some demo stuff is exactly what we want. And there is some demo prefabs within that list that we are going to be utilizing. Okay, now we've got AutoHand. So we're just going to actually do this. We're going to crank this thing all the way up to 90, 1/90 time step. And then that's good to go. So we'll we can use AutoHand just fine now. A second asset that I always import to all of my dev stuff is one called Advanced FPS Counter. I've coded a few FPS counters myself, but this one is just so easy to deal with. And it's got just a bunch of stuff built into the box, especially for VR, which is really convenient. So I basically always import that asset as well, so that I can just drag and drop that into a system and scene. Okay, so first things first, we need to head down here to AutoHand, and then we will go to examples and scenes, XR, and then prefabs here, because this has kind of a fully constructed XR scene, basically the same prefab rig that we used in the demo that we played for AutoHand. So we just need to grab this XR player, drag it into our scene. I'm going to hit F in the scene view so we can kind of see it has a bunch of stuff kind of attached to it, but it'll have basically everything that we need to basically just be up and running, which is most of the reason I bought it. Just so we can kind of use this for testing, but also replace certain things if we need to. So next, I want to add the FPS counter. So in order to do that, it's going to be in assets and plugins. There's code stage, advanced FPS counter, and then in examples and prefabs, there is a VR example prefab here. So what we're going to do is navigate to, we're going to open up the XR player that we just imported, and then we're going to drag the XR example and parent it to the camera object. And what that's going to do is basically map the FPS counter to the camera. And that's kind of basically set up for initial run. There's a plane in here already, but we'll be replacing that. So we can just leave it. And then from here, let's move over to actually Fusion 360 of all things, and we'll get the modeling started. Fusion takes forever to start up, even though I've got a PCIe Gen 4 SSD in here and like 24 cores to play with. Why does it take so long? There we go. Okay, move this up a little bit so you can see my full timeline. All right, so the reason I'm using Fusion 360 is twofold. One, I'm very experienced in Fusion 360 because I do a lot of modeling for 3D printing. So I'm really comfortable there. But two, being closer to proper CAD software than something like Blender, I can have accurate measurements. And the reason that's important is I want, particularly this test, to be for the real world size of this room and the walls and doorways and stuff like that, right? So I want to make sure that the models that I'm building are, at least in theory, properly scaled to a room. That way I can make sure that the room scale that I have in my notes is the right size. That's the whole point of this test. So as you can see in the notes, I've got kind of a grid system set up, and all of my notebooks are always dotted. I love dot grid. And this is one of the other benefits, is this grid system means that I can have a set units for this room size. So I know that, like, for example, the apex of the bottom part of the star of this room is a flat piece that's 1 square wide in my notebook. So that is going to be kind of the base unit. And I'm probably going to make that, like, I don't know, 5 feet or a meter or something like that, so that we're kind of translating like a D&D style map here, right? So I've used a plugin called Snaps in Unity before, and the default grid size for snap prototype objects is 3 units, which I think translates to 3 meters is the default scale there, which I think is fairly large. So what I'm probably going to do is have one box in my notes the same size as the height of the walls, which I'm not sure how tall I want to make, actually. So here's what we're going to do. First, let's start with creating a human scale object. It's pretty easy to do. We're going to do most of our stuff in a sketch workflow, which, if you're familiar with Fusion, is super common. Basically, it's a sketch workflow. It allows you to draw in 2D and then kind of use that as extrusion maps and stuff like that, which is exactly what I will be doing here for this. So we're gonna draw a cube, and you can see I've got dimensions here. So first dimension is going to be the width of my body, long ways, widest part, and then we're gonna do the, I guess, length of my body front to back, and then we're going to extrude that up the height of a normal human so that we can have a block that is roughly the size of a standard average human. And the easiest way to do that is just with a tape measure. So let's see. Luckily I've got one that's got inches and centimeters on it, thank goodness. So basically what I'm just going to do is like measure it, right? So this first dimension is width, so I'm going to measure kind of my shoulder width on average. I'm not going to be super tight with this. Looks like this is 2 feet or roughly 60 centimeters. So that's what we're going to put in here. 60 centimeters is actually 600 millimeters. And then hit tab over to the next dimension. And then let's just see what that's like. It's going to be obviously much smaller. Let's say 25. 25 centimeters is, I think, a good middle ground there. So that's 250 millimeters because the metric system is dope. So we can see we have our little square here. So next, if we finish the sketch, we now have a 3D flat 2-dimensional plane, and we're going to hit E for extrude. Then we need to extrude that up the height of a person. I'm just going to do 2 meters, which is 2,000 millimeters. Because that's like what, 6'1" or something, which is pretty close to my height anyways. And look, there's our human block. Looks really thin. All right, that's fine. Ta-da! Now, in order to export this, we have to do a couple of things. First, rename this to like human scale measurer. Measurer is a weird word. Second, because Fusion is really stupid sometimes, and Autodesk is really bothersome and trying to lock things down, we can't export this directly as an FBX, which is how I prefer to work for game assets. What we need to do first is save the document. So once we save this document, it will sync that save to the cloud. The reason we have to do that is because in Fusion 360, in order to export as FBX, it has to be cloud translated, which means that they'll do it on their own cloud servers and we download the FBX from there. So in order to do that, let's highlight our little object here and we hit export. I'm gonna name this human scale measurer, and then we need to choose FBX. Excellent. Export this thing. It's gonna basically upload that to the cloud save, or it's gonna pull the cloud save from its servers that Fusion has, convert it, and then download it and place it in my folder. This takes an unreasonable amount of time. Now we have our little human scale block. So what we're gonna do is go back into Unity and basically just import it. In order to be tidy, we need to create a folder, SCVR assets, so that I know that it's stuff that I am dealing with and not that's imported by some other plugin. And we're just gonna drag and drop this thing in. Now, one thing to note is by default, Fusion 360 is a CAD modeling environment, which means its axes are labeled differently than Unity's axes. Namely, you've got X and Y on the horizontal plane, and Z is vertical space. Whereas in Unity, it is a little bit flipped. You have X and Z on the horizontal planes, and Y is vertical space. It's a little bit annoying, and I could have set up Fusion 360 to change its axes, but I'm not going to do that because I still have to do 3D printing, and that's way more convenient. So instead, we're just going to rotate it. It's fine. We're just going to drag it into the scene, then focus on it. And then first things first, I'm going to reset the transform so that it's at 0, 0. And then we're going to rotate it. If I hold control, it will snap to designated angles. That way we can get to 90 degrees. And then we're just going to drag that up. Perfect. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect, but that's it. That is our human scale. We did it. Now, why would we do this? There's a couple of reasons. One is I want to make sure that everything that I'm importing for this test piece is scaled close enough, right? Is, if I have a cube that I can interact with or something like that, I don't want it to be giant. I don't want it to be small. I want to make sure that things are close to human scale. This also gives me a visual representation of standard height. So when I import the floor plan and a doorway, I can very, very quickly and easily make sure that that doorway is the right height for a regular person. I can measure my door and make sure that the measurements are accurate in Fusion 360, but that may not be the actual feel that I want in game. So having a human scale measure means that I can very quickly see, it's like, okay, this is 6 feet and a door is 7 foot normally. I don't like that. I want it to be bigger. So I'll make the doorway, 8 feet or something like that, just so it feels better in game, not necessarily just true to life. All right, guys, this is actually a really good place to pause. I'm looking at my editing timeline right now, and this video is already about an hour long. So I'm just going to cut it, split it into multiple devlogs. Thank you for watching this far. Do all the YouTube things. You guys know what to do. In the next episode, which will come out tomorrow, we will get all of these assets actually properly in Unity. We'll be back in Fusion 360 for a bit, making the actual floor plan, and then we'll toss it all on a headset, test it out, make some edits, that kind of stuff. It's gonna be a blast. But like I said, this video is getting very, very long, so I'm cutting it. Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.